5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
What's up, mga titos and titas? Welcome to Crypto Live Pilipinas Evening Edition!
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Ayan, magandang gabi, bayan. Parang Noli de Castro, dati ka natin to na. Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat, mga titos and titas. Aba, hindi ho ito emergency live, ha? Huwag kayong magpapanik, baka nagulat kayo. Bakit nagla-live si Tito? Bobombahin na ba o bubuhusan na ba Bitcoin? Wala pong ganon. Wag po kayo magpapanik, ha? Lalo na mamaya pag nakita nyo yung guest natin kung gaano kagwapo. Pwede kayong mataranta, ha? So steady kayo, mga titos and titas. Pag-uusapan natin ngayong gabi about ICP, pero syempre hindi mawawala dyan no? Yung Bitcoin update. Ano lang nga ba mangyayari ngayon? Natutulog ang Bitcoin sa 4-hour chart, tinitignan ko medyo nagko-consolidate siya. So tonight, sisilipin natin ano pwede maging direksyon. Tignan natin kung aabutan natin ang opening ng US market. Okay, na nandito pa tayo. Tito Chito Tan, yan. Gusto mo bang regular na to sa gabi? Ha? Depende kay Tito Nelson yan ng ICP. Di ba? Magandang gabi po, Tito Baby Toy, Tita Azil, Tita Mayazu, Azaya, ayun Oo. Nako, Tita Azil, antayin mo tong guest natin. Nako, dalawang gwapo. Mamimili ka na lang kung kaliwa o kanan ka ba. Ha? Yan. So today, yan po ang pagkukwentuhan natin. So kung naligaw lang kayo sa Tambayan, wag niyo kalimutang i-click yung subscribe button, yung all sa notification bell, and sit back, relax. Tito Eli Cash, salamat sa 50 stars na yan. Panggabi na ikaw, Tito. Hindi tayo panggabi. At hindi rin to emergency live, Tito Scout Martin, invite nyo po always ICP Manila. Yan gusto daw imbitahan lagi ang ICP Manila. May update kasi sila doon sa ckBTC na technology na ginagamit nila. So aalamin natin yan. No? For the meantime, papapasukin muna natin saglit. Hindi saglit, kasama natin to. O yung unang guest muna natin. Dalawa kasi to. Okay? Yung una, sigurado madaling kausap to. Taga dito taga representative ng ICP Manila. Yung pangalawa, mas madaling kausap sa Dfinity Foundation. Naka-base ito sa Zurich, Switzerland. So introduce muna natin today, palakpakan natin mga titos and titas, si Tito Nelson. Yan.
Tito Good evening, Nelson. Tito. Good evening, Tito. Good evening sa mga viewers. Magandang gabi. At salamat, Tito, sa napakagandang introduction mo. Yung lalo na yung sinabi mong gwapo ang guest. Hindi po ako yon. Yung next guest ang gwapo. Semi-gwapo lang, semi-gwapo. But thank you, Tito, for your introduction. Maganda yung sinabi mo nga na yung regarding sa technology. Meron nga kaming, ito nga pinag-usapan natin kanina, feature ng ICP. Ito yung ckBTC, Chain Key Bitcoin. So, isipin mo na lang, di ba? Napakalaki or napakalaki ng community ng Bitcoin. Halos lahat ng tao alam yung Bitcoin. Yung liquidity ng Bitcoin ay napakalaki. So, gumawa ang ICP para maitap yun. Na ito ay bridgeless, hindi siya wrap tulad ng mga naririnig natin. But this is a technology. And sino pang makapag-explain ng mabuti, kung someone from the Dfinity Foundation, sabi mo from Zurich itself, si Andrew, who will basically explain. Kasi ako, boses lang naman ako ng community, so marami rin tayong mga katanungan regarding sa technology. So isa tayong fan, isa tayong enthusiast ng ICP. alam natin ang technology ng ICP, pero ito bago ito. Bago ito si KBTC, malalaman natin kay Andrew mamaya.
Yes. Tito, for para last year, 'di ba? When we first met last year, pino-form pa lang tong ICP Philippines, diba?
Yeah.
Community dito. So bagong-bago 'yon last
One year ago.
Thank
Thank you sa help mo. Ikaw yung pinakaunang tumulong sa ICP Manila. Salamat.
I fully remember yon. So, how was the community now, and bakit importante yung Philippine community? Kasi galing Switzerland to, 'di ba? Tapos dinadala dito, gustong yun natin yung ma-involve yung Filipino community. Gaano ka-importante yan?
Well, actually, di lang naman sa Philippines. Actually, global naman tayo. Pero kung titingnan natin, isa tayo, ang Pilipinas, isa sa mga mabilis, malakas na adoption rate. So, isipin mo yung opportunity, di ba? Marami sa atin ang alam ng Web3. Marami sa atin ang alam ng technology ng crypto. And gusto pang malaman. Marami sa atin mga developers din. Marami sa ating mga entrepreneurs din who has invested, 'di ba, sa mga crypto. So, Philippines is very knowledgeable. Philippines is one of the fastest adoption rate globally. And hopefully, Philippines will stay there and continues. Kasi alam naman natin kaya tayo nandito sa space na to because ito yung future eh. 'Di ba? Ito yung 2024, 2025, isipin mo yung landscape ng crypto, ng Bitcoin, ng Ethereum, and all other blockchains ng ICP. So, napakalaking bagay nun. From last year to now, medyo lumaki na yung community natin. Hindi pa naman ganun kalaki. But meron tayong YouTube channel. Ipa-plug ko na rin. At ICP Manila sa YouTube. Ang title nito ay IC Stories Manila. Fini-feature natin lahat ng influential projects ng ICP. So, nood kayo doon, makikita nyo lahat ng mga proyekto na magagaling, influential na tao, na personalidad sa ICP. So, join us, follow us sa Twitter, and yeah, that's it. Sobrang plug
dito
na
ba
yun.
dito sa Philippines, kasi dami din mga projects dito eh, no? Meron na bang project na ginamit yung technology ng ICP? Or meron may nag-onboard or onboarding?
Yes, marami tayong onboarding. Mga known projects, di ko pa pwede sabihin, pero onboarding sila. Last Motoko Bootcamp, ito yung parang bootcamp, yung educational magtuturo ng pagtuturo ng Motoko, ayun yung language ng ICP. Marami tayong Pilipino na sumali doon. So, kakagraduate lang nila. So, yung mga yon, we're working with them and for projects as well actually.
Oh yeah, kasi alam naman natin na marami talagang mga talented Filipinos in terms of development, software development. They are being hired by foreign entities, di ba? Singapore, US, Europe. Kasi nga nandun yung talent ng Filipino. So ang ganda lang na may ICP dito na pwede nilang pag-aralan yung technology with the help of ICP Manila, of course.
Yes.
Para if they want to develop using yung technology ng ICP.
Yeah, kung gusto nila matuto, kailangan nila ng reference materials, everything, they just message ICP Manila. Mag-usap tayong Tagalog. Mas madali tayong magkakaintindihan.
Yun ang maganda. At saka, isa pa, no, gusto ko lang i-highlight to. Kasi, makikita nyo, sabi ko nga, last year pa kami nagkita ni Tito Nelson. Hanggang ngayon, nandito pa yung project, ha?
Yes!
Hindi rangkul yan.
Agree. Sakto.
Diba? So,
more years to come.
Marami kasi mga projects na during this crypto winter talagang nadurog na di ba? Wala ka na narinig, but si ICP tuloy-tuloy, di ba, yung pag-build ng community even in the crypto winter.
Yeah, we're ranked top 30 plus so sa CoinGecko. So but more than that, I think it's more about the technology. Now of course si Andrew can explain better coming from the Dfinity Foundation himself.
Ayan, yan. Sige. With that, Tito, ipasok na natin yung pinaka-pogi sa gabing ito.
Pinaka-pogi.
The most handsome SSS. Let's all welcome. Andrew from Dfinity Foundation. Andrew. Yun. Ayan na, anak ko.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi Andrew, good evening. How are you?
Good, doing well.
What's the
Excited to
temperature
chat about
there?
ICP.
How cold is there in Zurich right now?
Currently, it's 10 degrees. It's actually pretty warm. The last few days was a bit colder, but 10 degrees Celsius is okay. What about you? How cold is
Wow, it's it's so hot here. We're looking at 38 degrees to 40 degrees daily.
What?
Really?
That's
Sometimes
very hot.
even worse. Tell Tito the worst temperature here. You cannot even go out.
I mean, it's February. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should
Yeah, I
go
like
here.
the 10 degrees.
And the
Okay,
frost.
go ahead. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead, Tito.
we were talking about ICP while you are on the background, Andrew, and but prior to that, we were also telling the audience that you're the most handsome guy tonight.
That's very much debatable.
Yeah, it's not me.
Leonardo DiCaprio daw. Ayan, no? You look like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Comments from the community.
Comments from the community. Yeah. So, can you tell us about your background, Andrew?
Yeah, so I initially worked in Web 2, and I was back then we didn't call it Web 2, it was just called web development. And first I was a front-end developer and then developed more of a full stack. That was back in Denmark. And after that I wanted to do a little bit more of and dive in deeper into the technologies. So I studied machine learning and like artificial intelligence. And after doing my master's in machine learning, I went ahead and worked in data science for a few years. And that was at a point when I was working as a data scientist when I heard about the internet computer from a friend of mine. We used to just talk about different stocks and cryptos and different companies. And at that point, I wasn't really into cryptocurrencies too much. When I heard about ICP, I was like, yeah, probably just another shitcoin. And I looked into the technology to pay respect to my friend. And what I found was absolutely mind-blowing. Like the mission and the technology of the internet computer blew my mind because it was so different than from all the other cryptocurrencies that I've heard about. Very much different than Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and all these guys. And the mission as well is very grand. So I got sucked into it. I did a lot of research, and after about like 6 to 8 months, I was completely focused on the computer while doing my full-time job as a data scientist. So at that point, I applied for a job at Dfinity, and this is how I got in. And now I'm a developer relations engineer, which means I talk to a lot of developers, help them with different projects, but at the same time, I create a lot of content around the computer, write pages to explain, like translate what the researchers and the engineers do into language that is understandable by regular humans like us. Because it's a very complex subject, but I think it's not rocket science, understanding at least. Creating it is quite rocket science, like doing all the development and engineering that went into the internet computer. But to understand it and to have a high level idea of why the technology is revolutionary, I think it should be understood and understandable by anyone. And I guess that's my job, that I explain why and how the internet computer works and why I think it's the next big thing after Ethereum.
Yeah, it's surprising that being a tech guys, because as a lot of the tech guys that I've talked to, they are camera shy. They are more on the back end, diba? They are more on the back end.
Yeah.
But Andrew registers very well in the camera and can definitely explain in layman's term all the code. So this is really a good. He can really be a good bridge to the regular people like us for us to understand the technology behind the ICP. So comparing this technology to, yeah, of course, definitely this is not a shitcoin, but comparing this to the other Web3 projects out there, hundreds and thousands of Web3 projects, what's the difference and what's unique with the ICP?
Yeah, so there are a lot of differences, and I hope you guys have time and patience so I can walk you through all, or at least the most interesting ones.
Feel free to do so.
The Internet Computer is a smart contract-based blockchain project, similar to many others. However, our founder and the Internet Computer has this vision of a world computer. Basically, we're trying to build a computational platform that can be used by the whole world. And this, of course, requires not infinite scalability, because nothing is infinite in a finite world, but boundless or unbounded scalability. And it requires applications or Web3 applications to be 100% on-chain, because once you have a centralized aspect of your Web3 application, then it's not completely decentralized, which kind of defeats the purpose. So one major difference between the Internet Computer and every other current smart contract blockchain is that the smart contracts of the Internet Computer, also called canisters, can serve HTTP requests. So that means that you can host your whole application, including the front end, on the blockchain. So whenever you go into one of the dApps hosted on the Internet Computer, then most often all of the dApp is hosted from the blockchain itself. So you don't need centralized aspects. You don't need to use AWS or Google Cloud. And that's the same with data. It's very often incredibly expensive to host any amount of data on the chain itself, so that what most blockchains do is they rely on some kind of centralized service like this whole. If you have an NFT, then the token lives on the chain itself, but all the data lives on Amazon, or they use some other kind of storage solutions. And the Internet Computer provides the whole stack of the technology that you need, so that you can host your whole application on the blockchain, including the front end and the smart contracts, the backend logic, and of course the data. So you can have NFTs that actually are, when you buy the NFT, you own the whole thing, and not just the small token that is associated with the NFT. And that's the full decentralization is, I think, the major unique selling point of the Internet Computer. And it does this by having a subnet architecture. And I know that Avalanche also calls their subnet, or their shards subnets, but on the Internet Computer it works a little bit different. So we can add any number of new subnets as the network grows. So, and each subnet acts kind of like a blockchain. So when you add a new subnet, then you increase the network's capacity. And that's why I say the Internet Computer can scale without bounds, because you can always add new subnets. And the main difference between an Internet Computer subnet and the Avalanche one is that here all the subnets can communicate with each other without any problem. So if you have a smart contract on one of the subnets and you want to communicate or send messages to a smart contract on another subnet, you can do this using the Internet Computer. And on Avalanche, you have these kind of a walled garden subnets, so none of them communicate with the other. And another major technology innovations of the Internet Computer is something that we call the NNS. And the NNS is basically or network nervous system, is a large DAO that controls the whole Internet Computer. So whatever that runs currently on the Internet Computer is controlled by this NNS. So for example, all the tokenomics can be changed and upgraded. The protocol level code goes through this NNS. And why this is really interesting is because that adds another layer of decentralization for the whole network. Because whenever you want to change any part of the code of the Internet Computer, it will first have to go through a proposal that is voted on by all the users and all the token holders who hold ICP. And because we have the front end also running on the Internet Computer, that means that the NNS basically can control the whole network without relying on any traditional services, technology services. And because of the NNS or this DAO's innovations, you can update the protocol so deeply that normally you would rely on something called a soft fork or a hard fork. And a hard fork is like what Ethereum 2.0 the merge was, which means you have to create a new fork of the chain, and then you create some development, and luckily eventually you could merge back. And on their computer, there is basically a hard fork level update done to the network every week. Looking at the dashboard, currently 100,000 proposals or NNS upgrades have been processed by the network. And the way it works is once people vote on whether they want this code change or not, the network automatically upgrades the whole system. So there is no one clicking a button. Once the vote is processed, then the network does this update automatically, which is, I think, a really innovative and interesting feature of the computer.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the problems or issues that projects that are using smart contract is the trilemma. No, they want to solve the trilemma: the security, the scalability, and the trust in the system. So when the decentralization, when they use the technology of ICP, you're telling us that it's decentralized, so everything is not installed in a central server. So will that solve the trilemma problem?
I mean, it's a big claim to make that we solve the blockchain trilemma problem, but I'm going to argue that yes, the internet computer solved the trilemma. So it is decentralized, it is secure thanks to a novel consensus mechanism developed by Dfinity, and it can scale up without bounds. So, and if you want to have a world computer, and we also call it the blockchain singularity, which means that everything that currently runs on centralized hardwares and all the computation done by servers that host internet services will be eventually run by a blockchain platform, because doing computation on a blockchain is a lot more secure than having the centralized service. That's one of the reasons why the computer or dApps on the computer don't need firewalls, and same with the servers on the computer. There's no firewall at the edge of the system that protects against hacks, because every message that you send on the computer goes through consensus. So for example, we have this platform called Discover, which is basically a Reddit-like application running 100% on chain. And whenever you like something on Discover, you upvote something, that actually changes the state of the blockchain. And because there's something also called, that is different within a computer, the reverse gas model. When you interact with the chain and when you make updates, let's say you send a transaction or you like something, liking something is also considered a transaction and creates an update in the blockchain itself. But you as a user and you as an end user don't pay for that update. It works similarly how regular websites work. It's the developer that has maintains the costs, and they burn ICP to get to have the system running, but the end user can use it without creating a wallet or without even having any tokens. Now what's I going on this? Yeah, and if you want to have these web applications or Web3 applications used by millions of users, then you need this unbounded scalability, and you want to add computation, and you want to increase this pool. And unfortunately, a lot of the blockchains, because of their initial design, can't scale infinitely. Like often you see this theoretical maximum number of transactions per second, and even that theoretical number can be very high. But if it's a finite number, it's probably not good enough to scale so that the whole world can use that blockchain as a computation platform and have all these transactions. So not just transactions, but do a lot of other things, because I mean, Bitcoin in the beginning was just about sending transactions from different wallets. But that's now, it's kind of old school. So Ethereum introduced the smart contract, which allowed you to do a lot more, which, I mean, most of these smart contracts were pretty basic in their logic. Like if this, then that, and it's mostly token transfers here and there. And now I think the third revolution is the computer that creates a completely decentralized platform that can host web services and data all on the blockchain. I'll stop now. I think I've finished.
I see. So as we know, the technology keeps on improving, so we need to catch up on the development. You've mentioned Bitcoin as we know it before is really entirely different with the Lightning Network attached to it, and then several other upgrades were also done with Ethereum as well. So with ICP, you mentioned a while ago, Tito Nelson, that you have this technology called ckBTC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tito, before we go to the ckBTC, I just want to add to what Andrew just mentioned. And I just want to say that I've been preaching as well the technology of ICP here in the Philippines. And I did a presentation actually last year, I think in November, December. And that presentation, actually, Andrew, I'm doing the DOM presentation as well. That presentation was is stored on chain. And basically, I presented how it will cost on Ethereum, on Solana, on that presentation that I did. So everybody also took that QR code. There were around 100, I guess, during that time. And then they were able to see on their mobile phone, they were able to interact on chain on that presentation that I made. So it's just a sample of the technology of ICP. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Tito. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Thank you, Tito, for adding that. So, real world use case. Di ba? Yun ang nakita natin.
Exactly. Yeah, it was deployed on chain. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can interact with the blockchain. Yeah, going back to my question, Andrew, can you tell us more about the ckBTC?
Yes. Before going there, I also want to add one point that ties into what was said, is that storing 1 gigabyte of data for 1 year on Ethereum costs $79 million. And this was recorded in September when the price was a little bit higher, so it's a tiny bit lower now, maybe $50 million-ish to store 1 gigabyte of data, which is, I mean, it's impractical. And even though it would cost this much, it's impossible to upload that much data. It would have the network stop for a long time because it goes up in small bytes. And on Solana, the same thing, storing 1 gigabyte of data would cost $110,000. And on your computer, it's $5 per gigabyte per year, which is orders of magnitude lower, many orders of magnitude lower. So that's what allows someone like Dom and Nelson to have a presentation living on chain, because it's not, people usually don't do this because it's not practical on other blockchains. And if you want to have everything to live on the blockchain, then this is something that needs to happen, or this shift needs to be made. All right, but back to ckBTC.
Okay.
The main innovation it's important to understand before we dive into ckBTC is the Internet Computer's native integration with Bitcoin. So what that means is the Internet Computer smart contracts can create native Bitcoin transactions that will be processed by the Bitcoin network. It uses a technology called the threshold ECDSA. ECDSA is the signature scheme that Bitcoin uses. Basically, a smart contract on the Internet Computer signs this ECDSA, signs this transaction, and the transaction goes to the Bitcoin network, gets mined by Bitcoin nodes, and there is no third party or no central place that has to go through. So the Internet Computer is directly, natively integrated with the Bitcoin network. Of course, that means that you can create these transactions using Internet Computer smart contracts on the Bitcoin network, but it will be the same speed and the same cost as a normal Bitcoin transaction because it still has to be mined by Bitcoin nodes. And it's usually considered like 6 confirmations are considered as the safe because there's Bitcoin, in a way, it's never finalized. So you have, as you create more and more blocks, then the longest chain is considered a valid chain, and shorter chains can get discarded. But if you have only a few block advantage, it could be that another fork of the chain, another chain will be the longest, and that means that your transaction has to be mined again. So then it's not considered final. Anyway, going back, this is too much detail. So. The Internet Computer creates transactions on the Bitcoin network, but it takes about an hour to have the 6 confirmations because Bitcoin creates 1 block about every 10 minutes. Not super scalable. So to solve this problem, the Internet Computer created something called the ckBTC, or chain key Bitcoin, because chain key is the main one of the main cryptographic innovations that the Internet Computer uses to scale. And the way this works, it's you can call this kind of a bridgeless Bitcoin twin. Bridgeless because there's no bridge involved. There's no centralized entity that acts as a custodian that holds your Bitcoin. Instead, there is this ckBTC smart contract that lives on the net computer. And the way it works, it has a Bitcoin private key. So if you send this canister smart contract Bitcoin, it will issue you ckBTC. And it will always have a one-to-one pegging because it is a verifiable decentralized smart contract that holds the Bitcoin. There's no other third party that holds the Bitcoin. So for example, a good example is, you know how Solana had this bridge called Solet, and in there, the custodian of Bitcoin was FTX. And after FTX collapsed, you can now check the price of Solet Bitcoin, which should be 20-something thousand. It's currently 1,100. So it's because once the custodian went bankrupt, then all the supposedly one-to-one Bitcoin got depegged, and it's not worth very little because you cannot do this conversion back.
We've seen that
on ICP
to a lot of projects, a lot of tokens who are using custodian, right? So why did ICP decided to do this one-to-one pairing directly via this smart contract?
Because this ensures a verifiably secure one-to-one pegging. Because doing this and having the smart contract hold the Bitcoin allows for the BTC ckBTC pair to never depeg. Because whenever you send this smart contract a ckBTC or 1/10 of a ckBTC, you will always get back 1 or 1/10 of Bitcoin. So this, and people can look at the code, of course. Not a lot of people will, but all the technically savvy can verify that this is exactly what happens when you send ckBTC back. You will get your Bitcoin back. So, and that's how this one-to-one. And it's also open source code, of course, and it lives on the Internet Computer, and it's only controlled by the NNS that I mentioned before, a DAO. So Dfinity can't upgrade the ckBTC canister smart contract willy-nilly. Even if we want to make an update to, I mean, we developed it initially, but even if we want to make an update to this smart contract that holds the Bitcoin, it will have to go through a vote, and people that hold ICP will have to accept.
So that's mainly one of the advantage of this ckBTC over all of these other so-called wrap tokens, right? Yeah,
exactly. And that's how we don't call it wrapped on their computer, because wrapping involves a bridge and a central custodian. So we call it a Bitcoin twin, or just simply chain key Bitcoin or ckBTC.
Chain key,
because once you have this.
Yeah, first time I heard that the chain key. So it's really interesting. So it's also interesting to know that technology now exists, because we all know what happened to when the Terra Luna stablecoin got depegged, right? So it's really a huge problem that cost a lot of millions of dollars.
Billions.
Billions of dollars, right? So
that was crazy when that happened. I mean, I remember I was watching it live and seeing the price drop. I was like, wow. I mean, I didn't have any, but it was still crazy, right? And I think that the whole crypto industry took a dive after this happened. Maybe it was the first major collapse last year, and then we saw a lot more. Of course, last year was a bumpy ride, let's just say. But I mean, I think it's if you look at the long run, 2022 will just be a small bump in the. I mean, we've had these before. Like there were some craziness happening in 2017, and even before, like the Mongox hack, the BitConnect scam, and all of that.
So that is why it's really important. What we're doing tonight is to educate the people about the technology, right?
I agree. And I think during the crashes, the news that we had last 2022. What's forgotten are the stories of the people who lost their monies, families who lost their savings, people's lives ruined. So yeah, I think that's the reason. Yeah, that's the main big difference. You have to learn the technology behind what you're investing in.
Exactly. And not only learn the technology, but use it, because I mean, ICP has really cool technology and you can just buy the token and hold it. But I think it's a lot better and a lot more interesting if you actually interact with the blockchain. So for example, let's say if you buy ICP on Binance or any other exchange that allows you to send your cryptocurrencies around, then, I mean, we've learned at the FTX debacle that holding your cryptocurrency on a centralized exchange is not safe. And that was the perfect example. And I mean, Voyager was before. Anyway, so there are centralized exchanges have the unfortunate human factor. So usually smart contracts do what they say they do. I mean, the code is what it is. Yeah. But once you have the centralized exchange in the picture, then humans can do the messing around, and that's what happened with the FTX. So getting back to just for a second, using the technology of ICP. If, for example, once you buy ICP, you can send it over to the NNS, because that's where we do the staking. When people vote on this decentralized autonomous organization in the NNS, then they get voting rewards for participating in the network. And if you don't want to check code updates every day, you can also follow other people who do check it. And this is kind of a liquid democracy in which you can follow others, and then you get voting rewards by them voting. Or there is a fully on-chain kind of a prediction market built on their computer. It looks kind of like Twitter, but if Twitter had prediction markets built in, so you can kind of bet on what the price of Bitcoin will be in the next 2 weeks, for example, and then you can put an ICP there, and if you get it right, then you doubled your ICP, and it's a kind of a fun way, because ICP has so low transaction fees. It's 0.0001 ICP, so it's less than half a cent for one transaction, that you can do all these pretty easily and without losing much.
I see. So you're saying that you're encouraging people to not just to trade the token in the exchanges, but to use the technology. So during the early part of the discussion, you already showed us how the developers can use the technology. So my question now is how ordinary people like us can use your technology, your ICP technology. Can we use it in payments? Do you have a payment network, etc.?
Sure. I mean, yes, you can use it for payments, but payments it's the most often used use cases in blockchain, because Bitcoin was invented for payments, and the Lightning Network improved it at least a little bit. Yeah. So many other blockchains that came around, XRP is I think a good example, focuses solely on payments, even if they have smart contracts. Yeah. And on the internet computer, just like on the internet, payments is a small subsection of the things you can do with the technology. So, I mean, we have fully on-chain social media platforms built on their computer. That means it's instead of using Twitter or Reddit, for example, you can use one of these decentralized Web3 versions of it living on their computer. And usually, just by using this social network as a regular user like you and I, you would get rewarded by getting airdrops of NFTs or even fungible tokens that are on the internet computer. And eventually we will be transitioning with these social media platforms, and many others like games will create or will evolve to become something called the SNS, or Service Nervous System. And that is kind of you can imagine these as mini DAOs of Web3 services. So any Web3 service that is living on the computer can become a DAO itself, which means for us, the regular users who just use the applications, normally we will receive some of these governance tokens that these DAOs have, and we can vote on different features. So imagine if the main problem with Facebook, or I mean one of the many, is that it is governed by one central entity, and whatever Facebook goes is decided by basically one person or a few people at the top. And how good could Facebook become, or could have become, if instead it was governed and owned by the users of the service? So you can imagine a Web3 version of Facebook that lives fully on chain, which is kind of a necessity, because once you have decentralized parts, then you don't govern, like this DAO doesn't govern the whole Web3 service or application. So you have this decentralized Facebook, and all of the users who just use the application regularly, sends messages, create posts, dinner pictures, they will be part owners of this service. And they, by being part owners, they are also participating in governance. So I don't like these features, I'm going to vote no on it, or I would like this feature to be adopted. And you can imagine, and I think, going back a second, this transition from centralized entities like Facebook to decentralized ones like Discover or District on your computer, it's kind of the transition that we've made, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, when governments themselves were rather centralized. And slowly the government systems or governments have become more and more decentralized as time passed. And now most of us are living in liberal democracies, and I think we've proven that this decentralized system works a lot better than centralized ones.
I see. So that's one of the many use cases. Imagine you already have dApps on your smart contract. So that's just one of those. So I think it will be really best to explore more of the technology of ng ICP, no? So and learn more about those technology. So, Tito Nelson, I have a question for you. Itong meron kasing yung pouch.ph who preaches the technology of Lightning Network. Meron bang pagkakaiba yon dun sa dito sa Lightning and then the technology of your ICP?
Well, I really cannot say much about the technology about Lightning Network. Andrew, do you have idea on the tech of the Lightning Network and how it compares versus ICP?
The way I understand how it works is it's a layer 2 for Bitcoin, but it's a layer 2 that doesn't have smart contracts. So it creates these payment channels on which Bitcoin can move faster, and at the end, Bitcoin acts as a settlement layer. So you have a lot of transactions on the Lightning Network, and I don't know how exactly they do it, but then they don't store all these transactions on the Bitcoin network, but they kind of bundle them together and store kind of some kind of proof that is recorded on the Bitcoin network. So at the end of the day, you still inherit some of Bitcoin's security, but you can send more, you can have more transactions, so it scales better. But it's only for payments.
I tried it in one of the tourist destinations here in the Philippines, in Boracay. A lot of foreigners goes there. Yeah, there's a company there. Most of them are foreigners. Definitely funded. Not sure if the Lightning Network or maybe Strike. I'm not sure. Most of the merchants there accepts a pouch is powered by Lightning Network. But when I tried it, several times, it took a little bit of time. Still not there. It's definitely so again, what Andrew mentioned, Tito, is still not 100%. It's a layer 2, but again, it's not 100% using the blockchain of Bitcoin.
I see.
It takes time, so slow. It won't work.
I mean, ICP's ckBTC is very, very different than Lightning Network. So you can do things with it because ckBTC lives on the inner computer. It inherits all the cool stuff that the inner computer does. So you can have tiny tips of a few dollars or a few cents without really almost a zero transaction fee. Or you can, there's one game on the inner computer called Plethora. It's, I don't know if you know Fall Guys, but it's kind of a platformer where you run around and you try to finish the level as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So then you have this leaderboard, and now there is actually a ckBTC promotion going on, which means if you play this game and if you have, it's free to play. I mean, you just log in, you have a wallet, and you play the level. And if you're in the, I don't know, top 10 or top 50 people on the leaderboard who finish this level the fastest, then you will get ckBTC airdropped. How cool is that you can just win actual Bitcoin by playing a game, and it doesn't require you to invest anything, because the games on the computer are free currently.
I see.
And you can't do this with the Lightning Network or with just Bitcoin itself, because of the speed and the transaction fees are not there.
Yeah, I just have a few more questions before we. I'm reading a lot of questions from the audience, Tito Nelson. So I just have a few more questions for Andrew, and then we'll entertain questions from the audience. Try to pick na Tito Nelson. So Andrew, is ckBTC available in centralized exchange or decentralized exchange right now?
On decentralized exchanges, yes, there are a few that already support it on the computer. I mean, I can send you links, and you can share these links with your community later. Because I mentioned like Discover and Plethora and these games and social media stuff. And if your community wants to try these out, then I can provide a few links.
Yeah.
And on centralized exchanges, not yet. I mean, we are right now at the later phase of the rollout, so we are just we are now testing in production. It's already live and available for anyone to trade or just send to each other, but it's not yet on centralized exchanges. And I think, I mean, the way to get ckBTC and store it in a decentralized wallet is to buy ICP first. Then you send ICP to one of the decentralized exchanges, and then you can swap it with for Bitcoin. Or for ckBTC, sorry, and then you can store ckBTC on your computer-based wallet, which is decentralized. So then only you have the private key, you have the access to the wallet.
All right.
But it's
Sige. Tito Nelson, can you?
Go on.
Yeah, we'll get questions from the audience. Tito Nelson, may napili ka na ba dyan?
Where can I see it? Sorry. Is it in the chat?
It's on the chat. It's on the chat.
Oh, I see a question. Can I read
Andrew,
it?
You can pick questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if you're ready to take in community questions.
Sure. So I see Scout Martin asks, Bitcoin mining creates climate damages in excess of coin's value. Do you think ICP mining also creates big climate damages like Bitcoin? And for that, I have a very good answer. And the answer is no. The Internet Computer is the greenest blockchain currently in the world. I can say we are 21 times as energy efficient as Solana. And Solana is the second best after ICP. So ICP only consumes 0.008 watt hour per transaction, in comparison with the Solana, who is 0.16. So, and if you go down the road, if you go to the internetcomputer.org and you scroll down, there is a green section that shows all the energy consumption per transaction by different blockchains. And I mean, Cardano, for example, has 51.5, which is about 1 million times as more energy as the Internet Computer uses. So if you want to create a world computer that can host any systems on the blockchain, you can afford to have hundreds of times more energy than just regular Web2 systems, because it's not sustainable long term and it's not scalable. So the Internet Computer makes sure that it's very important for us to have an energy efficient green blockchain that can scale and eventually incorporate more and more services.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for the chosen question. Yeah, you'll get a prize. DM, ICP Manila likes giving out prizes. DM in Twitter. So let's get four more questions for Andrew. Community questions. Oh, unfortunately, I cannot see Tito. I cannot see the questions here. Hold on.
I'm going on YouTube. I'm looking at them on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube. Okay.
Chat. Yeah. Just pick another question, Andrew.
Yeah, I read somewhere that Mr. Daly, sorry, probably pronounced it wrong. I read somewhere that you want one chain, you want one chain to talk to another chain directly. Is this something that a lot of L2 chains are doing? So the way most L2, L1 blockchains currently, how they talk to other blockchains is using this bridged communication or this wrapping. So then you would send your whatever Ethereum, I know how it works on Ethereum, for example. You send your Bitcoin to a central custodian. That custodian will promise to hold your Bitcoin. And also there's a KYC process involved, so not everyone can do this, which is already a bit cumbersome. And then they will ask Ethereum to mint you WBTC or red Bitcoin. And in this, you have the 3 steps, which is, I think, not ideal, because first, it's not decentralized. It doesn't allow anyone to have to go through this process, while minting or while issuing ckBTC is basically available for anyone who can send Bitcoin to this smart contract. And yeah, and you still have to trust the central custodian to be nice and not to go bankrupt, which unfortunately is not always the case.
I see. So there's this one question. How do you plan to spread awareness about your project in different countries where English is not so good? Do you have local communities in Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and Korea?
That's a good question. And I mean, the English of Filipinos are amazing. So you guys speak perfect English. It's
yeah, it's
pretty cool, but
it's called nosebleed English.
what?
That's a joke, internal joke, where if you speak in English, your nose will bleed.
Bleeding because it's hard.
Is it? I mean, I hear you guys. You use a lot of English phrases when you speak Filipino.
Yeah. Well,
it's our second.
The Filipinos can
Second language.
Yeah, it's our second language.
Yeah. So
we were colonized.
yeah, we so to reach non-English speaking countries, we have a project that where we have people interested in their computer, and they will talk to their communities in their native language. And we have some people are doing translations to Chinese, for example. All of our docs are translated to Chinese, and so this is part of special projects. And of course, if you're interested, I think we're still hiring, and we would love to grow the ecosystem and reach out to different countries in their own native language, because not everyone speaks English, and for some it's a barrier of entry to learn first English and then use these dApps. I mean, hopefully all these dApps that we currently have only in English, like Discover or Plethora, will be translated to different languages. I mean, it's kind of a must, but I think this is how usually technology evolves first. It's a very English focused, especially if it's like internet technologies. I mean, if you just look at Facebook as an example, but now Facebook is in basically all languages. It takes time. First, we want to focus on developing the technology and reaching out to everyone to making people excited in, for now, mostly English, but not only, and then grow this more and more as the time passes.
Yeah, agree. And a lot of popular apps right now, Facebook, YouTube, they're in their native language right now. But it's been years, it took time. So definitely it will happen. But definitely, again, it's also cool to see your native language when you open an app. So that's a game changer. When you open it and it's in Filipino, you'll definitely be hooked. Yeah.
Interesting. For me, it's different. I mean, English is not my first language, as you can probably hear. But
oh, really?
Yeah, it's Hungarian. And,
so you prefer it English when you interact with apps?
Yes, I always. If the language automatically switches to Hungarian for some reason, I always switch it back to English. So my phone is in English and everything.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's one way to learn English. It helps, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll pick one last question from the audience. This is a good question. I always look for this in projects that I review. From Josh T854, what is your revenue model? In which ways do you generate revenue or profit?
Good. So, I mean, the Dfinity Foundation is a non-profit foundation, so we don't have revenue and we don't have profits.
Yeah.
That's more of the traditional company structure. However, if you're asking how the internet computer can be, let's say, long-term sustainable,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, yeah, which is kind of a must, then the way the system works is you have these nodes or node machines run by node providers, and they get ICP minted for them every month, and they can sell this ICP to then have to pay for the electricity and other service bills. So, and that means that if you mint more ICP, then it kind of acts as an inflationary force because you will have a higher supply. And to counteract that, we have a deflationary mechanism where developers who create dApps on a computer, they need to burn ICP in order to buy cycles, and cycles power these applications. And if you have, the more users you have, the more ICP you will have to burn in order to keep your application running. And eventually, I mean, what we've seen in the last year and a half is that the amount of ICP burned on these applications is going exponential, which means there are more and more people using the network and using ICP. That will create more and more burning. And if you burn more ICP than you mint, then the currency or the ICP token becomes deflationary, which should, in theory, if the demand is the same, a deflationary coin or token increases in value.
I see. So there is a
That's
burning
great
mechanism.
answer,
Multiple ones, actually. So there are 3 ways that ICP is burned. First, you pay for computation and data storage when you have an application and you run a Web3 service. 2, every ICP transaction has a 0.301 ICP that is burned. So if you have huge dexes with a lot of transactions, that will burn a lot of ICP as well. And third, we want to incentivize people to create proposals for the NNS, the DAO, that makes sense. So they don't spam randomly with just meaningless proposals. So it costs 10 ICP if your proposal gets rejected, and that 10 ICP is burned. So these are the 3 ways where that act as deflation or a deflationary pressure, and there are 2 ways that act as inflationary. One is we mint rewards for the node providers, which is rather insignificant in the big scheme of things, like the percentage of that gets minted. And 2, it is given out as voting rewards for people participating in the NNS governance. So if you hold ICP and you stake it, most of the inflation or minting gets distributed to you, and you get part of it. So it is kind of an inflation that is not that much of a problem because you capture that value. It doesn't just inflate away. You will get some of that value.
I see.
I hope that answers the revenue.
Thank you for that. It's good to know that you have burning mechanism. So one of the criteria that we are looking for projects are those burning mechanisms. So because it balances. So as you mentioned, you're producing also ICP, so it inflates the supply, but it balances out because of that burning mechanism. So
Exactly.
And
Currently we have like
go ahead, Andrew. Good.
we have like 3% inflation if you look at it. If you look at the last month, I think January, if you extrapolate that to a year, then we would have something like 2.6% inflation, which is funny because that's less than the US inflation, or like the US dollar inflation of the last year. So, and usually cryptocurrencies inflate more than regular ones, but this is a nice flip.
yeah.
And one more thing I want to, because this is my pet peeve. Inflation in itself is not bad. Not everything has to be deflationary. And people always ask me, when is ICP going to become deflationary? And eventually it may, but even if it doesn't, that's not a huge problem, because what you need is a currency that doesn't have hyperinflation, because that's obviously, am I getting noisy? No, anyway, so hyperinflation is not good, of course. Then you have a currency that loses value. but some inflation to a few percent per month, per year, especially if it gets distributed to the people, then that's okay. At least, I mean, it works out if you look at the supply demand equation.
Yeah,
All right. Thank
as
you.
well
Just had to get off my chest.
and knowing as well that you have
Yeah.
a 2% inflation, it only goes to show that there's a lot of users using the technology right now, because that inflation number comes from the users, right? So yeah, so it only goes to show that the technology is really working. That's why there are users who continuously patronize and use the technology.
Let me ask you a question now. So, what did you think about ICP before we started talking? Because I mean, now it's a huge information dump, but I'm curious, like, what your impression of ICP was before.
Yeah, you know, I'm a guy who was born during I grew up, I saw the rise of the internet in the web 1. So I really thought that ICP, because there's an internet protocol already on web 1 during the birth of the internet. So I really thought that that project or that company is the same as the ICP that we have right now. And knowing all of this information coming from you, and I'm really amazed that there's a lot of development that's happening with ICP, and understanding the technology, especially the CK technology that you have done. So as I mentioned to you earlier, that's the first time that I've heard that. I heard a lot of terms in crypto, but it's the first time that I heard that term. So probably for me, my forecast, my fearless forecast, this technology will be duplicated by other project, and this will be another category in crypto space in Web3.
Maybe, but maybe not, because it's not easy to replicate. It took Dfinity hundreds of engineers and 5 years to develop this. And sure, if you want to copy it, it's not going to be 5 years and hundreds of engineers, but it's still not going to be an overnight thing, because you can basically fork Ethereum and just do something else with it and rename the token, but you can't really fork ICP. First of all, it has currently 38 subnets, I think. It's 36 subnets, and that's 36 blockchains. And what ICP does that other blockchains don't do is we have private data, which means some of the not everything is public on your computer, because if you want to be able to upload even sensitive data to the blockchain so that only you can see it, and because it's not public, you don't have the whole chain that you can just copy paste and fork and create an Ethereum out of it. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Chain key, yeah.
Maybe. Just happy to know that if in case you'll be the first mover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to copy. I'm not super afraid that someone will just have an ICP 2.0 and run with it, because it takes a lot of engineering to get something like this running, and then you also need the different node providers and nodes running and set up the NNS, this DAO, and it's a lot of work.
Andrew, I think before we end, I want to pick your brain. What do you think, your thoughts on the current market right now? Bitcoin just jumped overnight.
Yeah. I'm honestly a lot more optimistic than many people. Many people call this another bear market rally or bull trap or whatever. Yeah. But I think, if you look at the CPI numbers, and don't look at the headline, because headline compares to last year's, which was a huge jump in inflation. So if you just look at the month-over-month CPI numbers, inflation is not accelerating anymore. It's still I think it's called disinflation when inflation stops increasing. Anyway, so inflation numbers look pretty good in my opinion, and they are going down every month. And also we've had quite a long bear market, or at least a long crypto winter. Yeah. And anytime that everyone is convinced that we are going even more down, and this is just the bull trap. That's when the market flips. When everyone is convinced that there is no way that there is a bull market on the horizon.
Yeah, by that time everybody seems to sell, and then suddenly
And then we go
the
up.
market
Yeah,
just yeah. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Tito.
because the usually the markets front run the economy about 6 months. So the
Yeah.
economy can still be in not a great position, but if the outward look for the next 6 months is positive, which it kind of is currently, because it looks like inflation is going down, the Fed will have to stop raising rates and then even reverse after a while. So yeah, I'm optimistic.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's
Thank
a
you
good point.
for that outlook coming from from a seasoned developer. Yeah, right. So I was really amazed by your answer. You know the CPI. It only goes to show that you're also monitoring the market. So what probably, Andrew, one final message for all the developers and all the people who wants to know more about ICP. Can you
I mean, if you're interested in development, I think it's probably the best time to learn blockchain development and get into the space, because teams and projects building on the inner computer, for example. I mean, I can speak to inner computer, so that's I'm going to be ICP biased. If you want to learn how to develop on ICP, I think it's a perfect time, because a lot of teams are looking for developers, and there aren't that many to come by. So sometimes you can get very good salaries if you are a good programmer, and it's also just it's a skill that will be useful for many years to come. So if you're interested, or if you have a little bit of free time, then spend some weekends to learn how to program on ICP, or create your own project, and maybe that becomes a DAO eventually, and then you will have your own governance token. That's also kind of cool. If you are also, if you're a designer and interested in Web3, you can contribute to that. There are many ways to contribute to the inner computer ecosystem. The first few is just learning to program and develop something, but also being a marketing person or a designer or many other things. And if you're not necessarily interested in directly contributing, just using dApps in the ecosystem, and maybe you don't want to use WhatsApp anymore, but you can switch to something called OpenChat, which is a Web3 100% on-chain equivalent to WhatsApp. And using these services are not only free, but it's also it helps the ecosystem grow, and then you will most likely benefit, like, financially. You'll get some tokens that are dropped every once in a while, which is kind of cool, just by using the system.
All right. Thank you, Andrew, for your time and for updating our community with with ICP, and we're looking forward to more updates from you, Andrew. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, let's chat in a few months.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Tito Nelson, final words, final message sa mga tambay.
Yeah, maraming salamat sa mga viewers ng live, pati sa mga manonood ng replay. Abangan nyo, we have an event in real life this March, provincial, dalawa, isa La Union, isa Bicol. Will be there, full of educational, kasama natin yung mga big projects sa Web3. So abangan nyo lahat yun, we will communicate sa Twitter. And maraming salamat sa mga support na mga enthusiasts natin ng ICP. Thank you.
Alright, so kung gusto nyo pong i-follow ang ICP, nasa link ng description ng video natin, yung kanilang social media links, yung Twitter nila, so para makakuha ng mga updates pa. So yun, thank you Tito Nelson and Andrew. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Good night. That's it for tonight.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Ayan, mga titos and titas. Ayun na. Ang ganda ng update na yon, ang habang kwentuhan, pero nag-enjoy ako kahit na alam nyo na, muntik na tayong maubusan. Ubusan ng baon. Mr. Dali, yung rewards, paano makukuha? Message nyo po ang ICP sa kanilang Twitter. So follow them on Twitter. So yung mga nagtanong, sabi naman ni Tito Nelson, meron po kayong makukuhang reward, no? So message nyo po sila sa kanilang Twitter para makuha po yung reward. Yan. Salamat po sa inyo lahat. Bago tayo magtapos, gusto ko kayong iwan ng isang update sa Bitcoin price. Ano ba nangyayari? Sa mandali lang. Lalagin ko lang tong trading view ni Tito. Maraming salamat po doon sa mga nakinig. Mahaba yung kwentuhan pero nagkaroon tuloy ako na interest talaga sa ICP dyan sa update na yan dahil kung makikita nyo, iba yung CK, no? Yung ckBTC na yun. That's really a new, for me, that's really a new technology na first time kong narinig eh. So, meron ako naririnig CK roll up, di ba? Meron tayong layer 2, may layer 1. So, that's another technology, itong CK na technology na to. I just don't know. Yun nga, sabi sa atin, mahirap i-replicate. But if ever na yan ay i-replicate, magiging first mover ngayon, 'di ba? Ang ICP. Dali lang, pasok lang natin 'to para masilip natin ang Bitcoin price sa update natin. Aha. Kita na ba? Medyo malaki pa 'to. Teka, adjust lang natin. All right. Okay, 4-hour chart ng Bitcoin tayo, mga titos at titas. Kung makikita ninyo, no, meron tayong supply zone, yung naiwan doon sa taas, yung tuktok natin kanina o kagabihan. Meron tayong demand zone doon sa buntot natin sa baba sa 4-hour chart. Yung 21.3 na local bottom natin, yan ang demand zone. And yung 25.2, yan ang local top naman natin. Nandyan yung supply zone natin. So kung makikita ninyo, halos nasa gitna ang price ng Bitcoin. Ito pong last 3 or 4 candles, last 3 na buo na candles na to, ito in-update ko yung mga nasa front seat natin. Sabi ko wala masyadong galaw yung Bitcoin price. Baka makakakita tayo pagbukas ng US market. Pero ito po, no, ito pong tatlong last 3 candles, ibabox ko para makita nyo. Last 3 candles na to, hanggang itong box na yan. Okay, itong box na yan. Ito gusto kong i-observe. Maganda pala kung darbas ang gagamitin natin. Okay. Gusto kong i-observe itong candles na to sa 4-hour time frame kung saan magbe-break. No? Kasi most likely, makakakita tayo ng direction. Okay. So ito kasi pwedeng ito yung contraction phase na tinatawag. No? So meaning yung consolidation. Tapos, pwede tayo makakita ng expansion phase. Okay. Ito yung mean price. No? So, yung gitna nito. So, pwede tayo makakita ng expansion phase either up or down and then makikita natin yung panibagong trend. Okay. After this. So, I'm observing. Right now, nasa sideline lang tayo. Kasi, gusto natin tignan muna kung saan papunta. Okay, kasi nakikita nyo, sabi ko nga sa inyo, nasa gitna ng supply at between the supply and demand zone. Instead of us na hulaan, okay, antayin natin. Pinakamaganda, antayin natin to na lumabas dyan at mag-form ng panibagong trend para makita natin. Kasi once na makita natin to na magfo-form ng trend ulit pataas, most likely we'll revisit the supply zone. So let's say, okay, kung pataas tayo, that's another 5% up, 'di ba? So kung sa baba naman 'to magbe-break, so yan yung inaantay, no, do sa darbas ni Kuyang. Yan ang inaantay. Kasi kung sa baba ito magbe-break, we're going to go down by, wait, nasa na yung panukat ni Tito? Yo. Sa baba naman to magbe-break 7.95, no? 7.95. So alam ko marami nag-aabang na dito niyan. Marami na nag-aabang dito. So expect nyo pagka bumaba po yan dito sa demand zone, we expect a bounce. Pwede tayo mag-double bottom dito. There's a possibility na mag-double bottom. Again, weekend tayo ngayon, mga titos and titas. So, pagka weekend, manipis ang market, pwedeng tirahin yan kahit saan side. Okay? Pwedeng paakyat, pwedeng pababa. Kuha tayo pa ng Teka lang, kuha pa tayo ng bias. Ano ang lagay ng Nasdaq. NS1 ba yan? Teka. Hindi ko na matandaan yung code eh. NQ1. Ang Nasdaq po, ito yung futures ng Nasdaq ha. Futures ng Nasdaq daily is down. Red tayo. Down by 102 points right now, no? So, usually kasi sinusundan ito ng Bitcoin price. Kaya tinitignan po yan pag mag-o-open. Mga 10:30 kasi mag-o-open ng Nasdaq, ang US market. So, kung down po ito, most likely we'll see yung price ng Bitcoin sa baba tatagos. Pero nakita naman natin din kagabi, 'di ba? Na kahit bumaba 'yon, pwede i-recover during the New York session. Okay, habang bukas yung US market. So yan ang aantabayanan natin mga titos and titas. And over the weekend, yung manipis na weekend na yan, mas magandang mag-relax, mag-chill muna tayo. Di ba? Ngayong weekend, mga titos and titas, yun na muna. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Maraming salamat sa pagtambay nyo ngayong biyernes ng gabi. Tito Chris Sabala. MATIC, Tito, nagwawala na naman. Silipin nga natin. Usually, itong MATIC, ang lakas nga nitong MATIC eh, no? Lumabas na naman. Grabe, 147 na. MATIC!
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Papakin you pilit ka talaga. Sakalam tong MATIC ha, mga titos and titas. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Yan na muna ang update natin ngayong Friday. Magkita-kita tayo sa Tambayan sa Lunes. At sa panibagong week natin mga titos and titas. Paano? Hapunan na! Bye!